So welcome back everybody, my name is Paul. I'm a country realtor in the western part of Virginia near Lexington. I talk a lot about homesteading because I'm a country realtor, as I said, and I practice a specialty in farm properties, rural properties, homesteads, and so on, country living, because that's the kind of lifestyle that I like to live. But today I'm going to talk a little bit about using space, and particularly I want to share a book that I have here, Feng Shui, I guess, of interior design. And this is just one book of many. I got into this recently, and I should have gotten into it a long time ago, because I look at a lot of homes, as you can imagine, and I've lived in a number of places. I've also traveled quite a bit, and I've seen a lot of different people, the way people live. And especially in a country lifestyle, you have to be very functional. My place, for example, where I live, there are several structures here. There's a small barn, a two-level barn. There's an old cottage that isn't really practical for living in. It's from the 1800s. And then there's a tool shed kind of thing, and then there's a small modular type of home. And the property itself makes up a combined unit of functioning things. I have storage over here and park my tools and tractor over there and things like that. So I can separate my space and the use of space. But this book here, Feng Shui, is a very interesting book about practice of how people use space. And it's actually, if you think about the space that we have in our home, it's a sacred space. And many people for centuries, if you look at some of the old constructions, they're all oriented toward the east, or they have a special orientation. They really thought a lot about it, especially when it concerned the temple. And if you're only going to erect a home and that was it, you're going to live in that home for most of your life and you have plenty of room to do it, well, you have a wide choice of how you orient the door. For example, if you put the door east, west, south, or whatever, if you put your door facing north, well, that's where all the wind comes in and so on. So there's a lot of controversy. And this book and the whole teaching of Feng Shui talks a lot about how we use our space and make maximum use of it efficiently, but also to make it really flow very well with the way that our activities are, and by having the movement as we go through the property, and where we keep our utensils and all kinds of things like that. So it's a very interesting subject, and I really want to encourage you. Again, this interior design with Feng Shui, and there's many books on Feng Shui. This was actually a pretty interesting book. It's pretty basic, and it doesn't have all the color diagrams and everything, but it does have a tremendous amount of information about, for example, I once lived in a place that had kind of a longer, it was kind of long and narrow, and the way it was laid out was really lousy inside because it's a manufactured home. And over the time that I lived there, I sort of like moved things around, and little by little I opened up stuff and everything, and it became rather interesting space because I just designed it in such a way, using some of the principles that I've learned here and just my own observation and so on, that when you come in the door, then you can have a choice. If you come in the front door of your place, wherever you happen to live, you want to be greeted like, I'm home. Okay, you see something nice, you can welcome you home. Anybody, your guests come in the door, they want to be able to look at something really beautiful. And then there's a flow of what happens. Like in where I was living in this particular place, you walk in the front door and you can either go left and you have the nice open living room kind of situation, and if you go right, then you have the kitchen. But either way, it was open in the middle. So if you look at wherever you happen to live, go around into different rooms and stand in them for a minute. Like, for example, you take a bedroom. A lot of times the way that houses are built these days, unfortunately, they just chop things up. They like a 12-foot wall makes sense because you got those nice little, 3 sections of 4, or you got a 16-foot wall or a 20-foot wall or something like that. And they just, sometimes the builders just slap something together and say, hey man, like just make it 12 by 8 or 12 by 16 or whatever. And you don't really have much of a choice of really using sacred geometry or some kind of really nice dimension. They just slap it in there and they don't really care. It's just space. You see, but if you have a chance to design your own house, whether you got a house or you renovate a house or you build your own house, and modify it and walk through the different rooms, for example, and you stand in the middle of a room and look around where the door is. Is there one door? Where are the windows? Where's the light come in? Where do you want your bed? sometimes you see these houses are built that there's really no good place for a bed, or maybe there's one place that's the only place you can put a bed because the door's in the way or the closet's in the way or something, and it's very, very awkward. So what I suggest people do when they think about living in a homestead, you're going to have a lot of operations, a utility kind of a situation. You have to, some people can goods, or they pack things, or you might have some hobbies or some crafts going on there. You might have some animals you feed, and you got to store their stuff and their leashes and everything, and all that stuff. So if you really think carefully about how you design your property, because like I said, for me personally, in my experience, that's why you see a lot of farms have multiple buildings. Okay, there's this building, that building, this building. You see, they keep certain activities separated because you don't want to have to contaminate everything as you go, for example. And a foyer is a really good use of space because you come in the house, either from the back or the front, and you're out there walking around. You don't want to always have to wash your shoes every single time. You have a place where you can put the shoes, something that's easy to clean up, maybe something you can spray down quickly, and use the space that way. Now, I'm going to go through a few other things here, the basic principles, and things where you can find space that you may have unused in your place. For example, I talked about this in one of my other videos, the corners. As you go walking through a room, and sometimes you tend to go like, people don't actually go into the corner 90 degrees and then take a sharp left. They tend to kind of round the corner when they go around in a room. Well, there's some space in that corner where you could put like something that is a rounded thing, something a pedestal, something that's cylindrical that occupies that space, maybe a plant, that it's used for something beautiful, or maybe a little bit of storage, or maybe a corner type of shelf, kind of like this one, or something to use that space. And so that when you round the corner, cell type of wall, like you see, so the same way when you walk in your front door, where is the most likely place that you're going to walk, or your guest's going to walk as soon as you walk in the front door? You don't want something standing right there, like some kind of big, huge trunk or something. And one day some years ago, I was living in this place, and it just kind of got me. I had put a certain shelf right in the middle of a certain space, and I thought it was all kind of cool because I could use it as a little bit of counter in the kitchen, and But then the more I thought about it, I said, man, that place that I put that shelf is exactly in the middle of where I want to walk this way, that way. So subconsciously, every single day, I was going around this way, around this way. Finally, I said, I've got rid of that thing. And I had the couch positioned another way so that when I wanted to walk a certain way, I could bump in the couch. Okay, so it's like a maze. I got to go do. It gets in your blood after a while. You get adjusted to a space that's not used right, and then it just like, it's a real pain. But then one day that you finally just do some spring cleaning and you just reorganize the whole space and move the furniture around, and it takes a while to live someplace for a while to figure out exactly how the flow is. But if you do it right, that one day, like that time that I did that rearranging in my home some years ago, I had to go lie down almost, because it was like, oh man, the whole flow is totally different. Now when I opened up the door, in that case, it just flowed right in, and instead of having a door that was like awkward and there's a couch in the way as soon as I walked in the door, and instead of all that, I had a big open spot. So find the places that I call power spots in your house, in your different rooms, especially in the living room or wherever you first enter. Walk in your house, take a few steps, and look around. Almost like look at it as a chessboard. The queen can be in the middle, and the queen can go this way, that way, anyway. See, just pretend you're that like person that's going to move around in your space. So, if you want to go to the bathroom, which way is it, this way? Or, and if you have a chance to redesign your own house or design it from scratch, trust me, a lot of the houses that are built these days, they don't think about all this sacred geometry stuff. Speaking of which, I got this really beautiful book here. I'll talk about it just briefly here. Because if you look at ancient structures, cathedrals, and Native American, even the primitive structures, some of these stone circles are so primitive, but they're all oriented a certain way. Even if they made like a little teepee or something, they had the door facing a certain way. They had a circle in the base. They had the fire in the middle. They had the chimney up ahead. It was just a whole habitat A lot of homes that are built these days are just not really designed as a true habitat. They're just like slapped together boxes, and maybe they're convenient. If you're lucky, they put it a certain way, and maybe if you got really lucky, you have sun come up in the morning and it's shining in your kitchen window, but maybe not. Maybe the kitchen window's facing this way, and maybe your neighbor's facing that way, and it's just a mess. So I really urge people, homesteading a lot of times is built from scratch, or the remodeling. You have a chance. It's a very big operation. It's a utility kind of operation. So when you do homesteading, you have a chance, as you build your homestead, to really think about all the designs, and especially some of your outbuildings. For example, when you go out your back door, okay, let's say you're going to walk over to the barn. Okay, is there a path to the barn? Is there something in the way in the barn? On the way to the barn, can you design the flow? I put a garden one time in a place I was living, and after a while I realized that's a bad place for my garden. And then I finally realized that if I just take an angle in the sun, okay, right in the middle here, and it gets the most daylight of any place in the garden, and it's easy to mow around, and it works. So the Feng Shui also applies outside. Now, if you want to get into some really detailed stuff, start looking into the geometry of sacred spaces, and how they were organized, and put an overlay of some of these sacred designs, geometrical designs, put an overlay on your own house. Some of these, the way that space is divided up conceptually. In the ancient people, the metaphysics of ancient structures, it was all about the geometry, really. I mean, the cathedrals were designed as acoustical resonators. So everything, all the internal spaces, for example, here's another example. Conceptually designed, a room divided up into segments. Like there's a power spot in the middle, okay? You can look any direction, okay? That's why circular buildings were used for a long, long time. They're still used. Yurts and igloos and teepees and so many other designs are circular in nature. Domes. And they blend into the nature. And if you can live in a circular space, it's a little awkward to live in a yurt. I've been in a yurt. I haven't lived in one, but I've spent some nights in a yurt, and they can be really nice. It's just they have a very different arrangement around the outside. You have to kind of think differently about where you put stuff. And then, again, using these diagrams and dividing up the conceptual space of a dome or a yurt, you can think about where's the best place to put a window? Where's the best place to put your bed? I have been told that if you put your head toward the east, that's the best way, because then the sun comes up and it draws it to your head. But if you put your head toward the north, then the electrical nature, the magnetic nature tends to pull your blood toward your brain. That's what I've heard the yogis in India talk about. That it tends to have an irritable sleep if your head is facing toward the north when you sleep. So if you sleep with your head toward the east better, then it's just better for your body. That's what the ancients have taught for a long time. So again, sacred space is very important. Our home is just so precious. We come in our home, and we want to get into our home and feel totally relaxed at home. And unfortunately, as a realtor, I see a lot of homes, and I go, wow, even as expensive homes, I couldn't live here. It's just, I don't care how expensive it is. It's just the way it's designed, the awkwardness, the lighting, the fabrication, it's just not good. So, again, homesteading is an operation that you get into and continue on for quite a while. And you have many, many chances and decisions to make about how you use that space, and think about these geometric designs. So I'll go through a little bit of my list here to finish up here. The lighting is really important, how you put lighting in your house. I've been in some houses where they may have an expensive piece of a fixture, but it's not really, it looks nice, but it's not really doing a great job as far as the lighting. There's kinds of lights that you can put in a home sometimes that are accent lighting. Maybe you need hallways dark, and so you can put little runners of like LEDs. You can just lighten up the whole place, and there's times when you can open a window, put some curtains a certain way, or sometimes you can put skylights in a house, and that adds a whole lot of light. I love skylights. If they're done right, a skylight is just they rock. The sun comes in and just shines. It's like, I just feel like you're partly outside. The traffic flows, make some diagrams. I suggest make some diagrams of your property, of your house, and just think of what would I do? How do I flow? Where do I go in my house? You know, follow yourself around, and what do your children do, and where do the pets go, and all that. And then it's fun. It's a fun operation to think about how to really structure your property and grow into it so that it's just a smooth operation. And maybe there's some trees in a way, like it could be a tree in the way of a really nice flow, and if you just got that tree down, that one particular tree, you don't have to cut all, but maybe that one tree's in a way, and then it just makes the whole flow of the property a little different. On the other hand, maybe planting a tree where there isn't a tree. Well, if there's a tree there, it would just add that extra little dimension and shelter or whatever. So it's a positive and negative. There's negative space, which is empty space, and then there's space that's occupied by something. And the space that's occupied by something, make sure you really want to occupy that. There's a saying in aviation, like there's nothing on a plane that doesn't need to be there. If it doesn't need to be there, it's not going to be there on the plane because weight counts. Same way in your house. You think about it, it's really hard for modern living. People, I've been dwindling down for some years now, about 8 or 9 years since the divorce. I've been downsizing, and I'm kind of stable right now in the downsizing. But there's just realization that we have an awful lot of things in the modern living, and where we put them all, and that we don't even use them. And if we're not using them, then what good are they? So the homesteading. The nice thing about homesteading is you have a lot of hobbies. Great, have a homestead because you might have a craft room and garden room and art room and so on. So I love homesteading because it really is a complete type of lifestyle where you have your work and play a lot of times right near you, and your family can grow up and be around animals. But again, I want to talk a little bit more in other videos about this, the use of space and how it is actually a sacred space that we live in. And think about also people's height. Some people are taller or shorter, and if someone who's really tall and they have to duck just a little bit every single time they go through a particular door, after a while it's just so unnerving. Maybe you could just like make the door just a slightly round up and now they walk through the door. You don't have to duck. So there's a little tiny things like that. You can just sometimes just nick something in your house that's just causing a little bit of irritation, and then make it into something that's a smooth flow for you and your family. Form and function, there's books about that. I suggest look into, there's one book I read years ago, I don't have it with me right now, called Form and Function. And also taking advantage of space that's above things, like on top of a refrigerator or top of a cabinet. There's sometimes, you know how a cabinet, you might have an armoire, and then on top of it, there's like 3 feet before the roof, and like, oh my God, it's like, it gets dusty up there, and it just looks junky. So there's things that you could put there, to occupy it, that works with the structure. I was in a house one time where we wanted to have a big, huge TV thing, but we didn't want to buy one of these crappy things. So we ended up having driftwood, and we made this whole shelf thing, and we designed it around our speakers and our TV, and it had like this open feeling because it had all the shelves there, but it didn't have the bulkiness of a big, huge shelving unit. The uprights were just part of they looked like driftwood. And it was an open beam type of house with a skylight, so it was really delightful. So you can do clever designs using certain kinds of materials and certain kinds of structures in your house to store your goods and still keep that really nice smooth flow and well lit and so on. So I'll talk more about this in other videos. I don't want to make them too long. I appreciate the feedback, and please like and share and come back, and I hope you see some more of my content. And thanks again.